Lieutenant Jack Mason tugged nervously at his dress uniform as the shuttle docked with the massive Vraxian vessel. The metallic clunk of the connection echoed through the cabin, making several members of the diplomatic team flinch. Jack reached down to scratch behind Rusty's ears, drawing comfort from the Belgian Malinois, who sat perfectly still beside him. "Are you sure bringing that dog was necessary, Lieutenant?" Admiral Karen Wright asked, her voice tight with tension. "Yes, Mom. Rusty's my service animal. He keeps me steady under pressure," Jack replied. He didn't mention the nightmares from his last deployment or the way Rusty could sense his anxiety attacks before they hit. That was between him and his therapist. The Admiral nodded curtly. "Just keep him under control. We don't know how these aliens will react to an Earth animal." 3 days ago, the Vraxian Empire had appeared in Earth's orbit with 40 warships and a simple message: surrender or be destroyed. Rather than immediate capitulation, the United Nations Space Council had scrambled to assemble a diplomatic team. Jack's inclusion had been a last-minute decision. Someone high up thought having military personnel might appeal to the apparently martial Vraxian culture. "Approaching final seal," the pilot announced. "Atmosphere readings nominal. Gravity set to Earth standard, surprisingly accommodating of them." Jack felt the familiar weight of dread in his stomach. Rusty pressed against his leg, sensing his discomfort. The dog's warm presence helped center him. "Remember," said Dr. Gray Powell, the team's xenolinguist, "initial translation programs suggest the Vraxians respect strength and directness. Don't show fear if possible." The airlock cycled open with a hiss, revealing their first view of the aliens. Jack struggled to keep his expression neutral. The Vraxians stood nearly 7 feet tall, their bodies covered in overlapping scales that shimmered between green and blue under the lights. Their faces featured vertical slit pupils and yellow eyes, set in elongated skulls with bony ridges. They moved with a predatory grace that reminded Jack of the crocodiles he'd seen during training in Florida. 4 Vraxian guards flanked a larger individual adorned with metallic embellishments on its scales and an elaborate uniform. "I am Commander Scathar," the central figure announced through a translation device worn at its throat. The voice emerged as a harsh, artificial approximation of human speech. "You stand aboard the Imperial vessel Dominant Claw as representatives of your planet. I expected your leaders, not underlings." Admiral Wright stepped forward. "I represent Earth's unified space authority with full diplomatic powers. We came in peace to discuss alternatives to conflict." The Vraxian commander made a sound that the translator didn't catch, but Jack recognized a dismissive snort when he heard one. "Your species has barely reached your own moon. Your ships are primitive. Your weapons are insignificant. There is nothing to discuss except the terms of your surrender." As the commander spoke, one of the Vraxian guards noticed Rusty and tensed visibly, raising some kind of weapon. "What is that creature?" the guard hissed through its translator. All eyes turned to Rusty, who sat calmly next to Jack, watching the proceedings with alert but unthreatening attention. "This is Rusty," Jack explained, keeping his voice level. "He's my companion and assistant. He poses no threat." Commander Scathar approached, towering over Jack. Its vertical pupils narrowed as it studied the dog. "You bring a beast to diplomatic proceedings." The commander's translator conveyed what seemed like surprise. "He's highly trained," Jack said, placing a reassuring hand on Rusty's head. "He follows commands precisely." The commander made a series of clicking sounds to the guards, who lowered their weapons but continued watching Rusty warily. "Interesting," Scathar said, turning back to Admiral Wright. "Perhaps humans are not as soft as our intelligence suggested. Now let us discuss how your planet will serve the Empire." As they were escorted deeper into the ship, Jack noticed something odd. The Vraxian guards kept a careful distance from Rusty, their weapons half raised whenever the dog moved. For creatures so confident in their superiority, they seemed unusually cautious around one medium-sized Earth canine. Jack filed this observation away. It might not matter, but in negotiations this desperate, Any advantage could prove useful. The Vraxian Command Center resembled a massive arena more than a conference room. Jack, Admiral Wright, and the rest of the human delegation stood at the bottom of a circular pit, surrounded by rising tiers where dozens of reptilian aliens observed them. Commander Scathar sat on an elevated platform directly across from them, flanked by what appeared to be military advisors. Rusty remained perfectly still beside Jack, seemingly unaffected by the strange environment and alien sense. "Your species occupies valuable territory," Commander Scathar said. "The Empire requires your resources and strategic position. Resistance would result in unnecessary deaths." Admiral Wright maintained her composure. "We believe a peaceful partnership would benefit both our civilizations. Earth has unique biological and cultural resources that would be destroyed in a conflict." The commander's tongue flicked out briefly, a gesture Jack couldn't interpret. "Partnership with primitives. Your bodies are soft, lacking proper protection. Your limbs break easily. Your ships lack basic defensive capabilities." Dr. Powell, the xenolinguist, whispered to the admiral, "They'd value physical traits. They're judging us on biology, not technology." One of the Vraxian advisors leaned forward, pointing a clawed finger at the humans. "Commander, observe their physical weakness. No scales, no claws, minimal muscle density compared to our warriors." Jack felt Rusty shift slightly beside him. The dog sensed his rising tension and pressed against his leg in response. The subtle movement caught the commander's attention. "What training has your beast received?" Scathar asked suddenly, yellow eyes fixed on Rusty. Jack glanced at Admiral Wright, who nodded slightly. "Rusty is trained in protection, tracking, and assistance duties. He responds to over 40 verbal commands and numerous hand signals." The commander's interest visibly increased. "So it is a war beast? A hunter?" "Not exactly," Jack replied carefully. "He's primarily a service animal." Scathar descended from his platform with surprising agility, approaching until he stood just 10 feet from the human delegation. Several guards moved forward protectively, weapons half raised. "May I observe its capabilities?" the commander asked, though his tone made it clear this was not truly a request. Jack looked to Admiral Wright again. She gave another small nod. "Rusty, sit," Jack commanded. The dog, already sitting, remained perfectly still. "Stay." Jack moved several paces away. Rusty didn't move a muscle. "Come." The dog immediately trotted to Jack's side and sat again. The Vraxians watched with intense focus. Jack noticed their pupils dilating, a sign of alertness or possibly alarm. "Remarkable control," Commander Scathar said. "The beast shows no hesitation, no rebellion. How many years to break its will so completely?" "We don't break their will," Jack explained. "Dogs and humans have worked together for thousands of years. It's a partnership based on trust, not dominance." The commander made that untranslatable clicking sound again, which Jack was beginning to suspect indicated disbelief. "Lieutenant," Admiral Wright said quietly, "perhaps a demonstration of Rusty's physical abilities." Understanding her strategy, Jack nodded. "Rusty, jump." The dog leaped into the air with athletic grace. Several Vraxians flinched visibly at the sudden movement. Their reaction did not go unnoticed by Dr. Powell, who leaned close to the admiral. "They're displaying fear responses," he whispered. "Their species might have evolutionary reasons to fear canid predators." Commander Scathar circled them, keeping a careful distance from Rusty. "These creatures are kept throughout your civilization." "Yes," Admiral Wright answered. "Millions of them live among us." The commander's scales rippled in what might have been surprise, and they all obey without question. Jack knelt beside Rusty, scratching the dog's neck. "They're loyal companions who choose to work with us." Choose. The concept seemed to confuse the commander. He turned to his advisors, engaging in rapid conversation in their native language that the translators couldn't catch. When Scathar faced the humans again, his demeanor had subtly changed. "We will continue these discussions tomorrow." You will bring the beast again. I wish to understand more about this partnership. As they were escorted back to their temporary quarters, Jack noticed the Vraxian guards maintained an even greater distance from Rusty than before. Something had shifted in the diplomatic dynamic, and somehow his service dog had become central to Earth's first alien negotiations. The second day of negotiations began with a surprise. Instead of the formal command center, the human delegation was led to a large, empty chamber with high ceilings and metallic walls. Commander Scathar waited in the center, accompanied by several high-ranking Vraxians and what appeared to be scientific personnel. "We have prepared a more suitable environment for demonstrations," the commander announced as they entered. Admiral Wright exchanged concerned glances with her team. "Demonstrations? We expected to continue our diplomatic discussions." "This is diplomacy," Zathor replied. "We must understand your capabilities before meaningful negotiations can occur." Jack noticed the aliens had arranged various objects around the room. Barriers of different heights, corridors made of transparent materials, and several mechanical devices whose purpose he couldn't determine. "Your war beast," Commander Scathar said, pointing a clawed finger at Rusty. "We wish to observe its combat functions." Jack tensed. "Sir, Rusty isn't trained for combat. He's a service animal and companion." The Vraxian commander made a dismissive gesture. "Your attempts at deception are transparent, Lieutenant Mason. No species would maintain a predator unless for tactical advantage." One of the Vraxian scientists stepped forward, holding what resembled a tablet. "Our scans indicate enhanced musculature, specialized dental structure for tearing flesh, and sensory capabilities far exceeding your own species. These are not traits of a mere companion." Jack realized the aliens had completely misunderstood. They couldn't comprehend the idea of keeping dogs as pets rather than weapons. Before he could clarify, Admiral Wright placed a warning hand on his arm. "Perhaps a demonstration of Rusty's skills would help clarify his role," she suggested carefully. Taking the hint, Jack nodded. "I can show you some of Rusty's training exercises." Commander Scathar stepped back, giving them space. "Proceed." Jack removed a tennis ball from his pocket, a comfort item he brought from Earth. "Rusty, ready." The dog's ears perked up, eyes focusing on the ball. "Fetch." Jack threw the ball across the chamber. Rusty exploded into motion, racing across the floor with impressive speed. He caught the ball in midair with a graceful leap, then returned it directly to Jack's hand. The reaction from the Vraxians was immediate. Several backed away, scales flattening against their bodies. One junior officer made a high-pitched trilling sound that the translators didn't catch. "Such speed," Commander Scathar observed, his voice containing a new note of respect. "And it returns the projectile for reuse. Efficient design." Lieutenant Olivia Martinez, the team's exobiologist, whispered to Admiral Wright, "They're displaying classic prey responses. Their evolutionary history must include predators similar to canines." Jack continued with basic obedience commands, having Rusty weave between obstacles, jump over barriers, and retrieve specific objects by name. With each demonstration, the Vraxians' reactions grew more pronounced. The beast responds to verbal commands without visible control devices, one scientist noted. "Is there neural implant technology?" Jack shook his head. "No technology, just training and trust." Commander Scathar approached slowly, studying Rusty with new intensity. "And you claim there are millions of these creatures on Earth?" "Yes," Admiral Wright confirmed. "Many households have them. All trained for war?" another Vraxian asked. Before Wright could answer tactfully, Jack responded honestly. "Most are just family pets." The translator struggled with the concept of pets, rendering it as domestic subordinates. This seemed to only increase the Vraxians' alarm. "Your species keeps predators as household guardians," Commander Scathar stated, as though confirming a frightening fact. "Even your civilians maintain battle-ready beasts." Dr. Powell tried to correct the misunderstanding. "They're companions, not weapons. They—" "Enough deception," the commander interrupted, Tomorrow, we will truly test the war beast's capabilities." As they were escorted out, Lieutenant Martinez moved closer to Jack. "They're completely misinterpreting everything about Rusty," she whispered. "But their fear response is real. I think they evolved from prey species with natural predators similar to wolves or dogs." Jack nodded, scratching Rusty's ears as they walked. "So what do we do? Tell them the truth or let them keep believing we're all walking around with trained killing machines?" Admiral Wright, overhearing, gave him a significant look. "For now, Lieutenant, we let them believe whatever keeps Earth safe." The human delegation gathered in their assigned quarters, voices hushed as they discussed their unexpected diplomatic advantage. Admiral Wright stood at the center of the small group, her expression thoughtful. "They're completely misunderstanding the relationship between humans and dogs," Dr. Powell said. "But it's working in our favor." Jack sat on the floor beside Rusty, who was enjoying a well-deserved rest after his demonstrations. "I feel dishonest letting them think Rusty is some kind of super soldier. We haven't actually lied," Admiral Wright pointed out. "They've drawn their own conclusions, and right now, those conclusions might be saving Earth from immediate invasion." Lieutenant Martinez knelt down to examine Rusty more closely. Their reaction is fascinating from an evolutionary standpoint. The Vraxians clearly evolved as prey animals, despite their current military culture. Their instinctive fear of Rusty suggests their home world had predators similar to Earth's canids. A soft chime indicated someone at the door. When it slid open, a junior Vraxian officer stood nervously in the corridor, eyes fixed on Rusty. "Commander Scathar requests your presence for an important announcement," the alien said, keeping a careful distance from the doorway. They followed the officer to a new location, a large observation deck overlooking what appeared to be a training arena. Commander Scathar waited for them along with several high-ranking Vraxians. "Humans," the commander began, "we have decided to properly evaluate your war beast's capabilities." Jack felt his stomach tighten with apprehension. "What exactly did you have in mind?" Scathar gestured toward the arena below. "A simple challenge. Your beast against one of our security drones." The floor of the arena slid open, and a metallic sphere approximately 3 feet in diameter rose into view. It hovered several feet off the ground, covered in sensors and what looked disturbingly like weapon ports. "This is unnecessary," Admiral Wright protested. "We came here to discuss peaceful coexistence, not to engage in combat demonstrations." The commander's scales rippled in what they had come to recognize as amusement. "If you truly wish peace, you will demonstrate your capabilities openly, unless you fear your beast is inadequate." Jack knelt beside Rusty, genuine concern in his eyes. "I won't put him in danger. He's not a weapon." Martinez leaned in close to Jack and whispered, "That drone is designed for training exercises, not actual combat. Look at the sensor array. It's for tracking movement, not targeting weapons. I think this is a test of our confidence, not actually meant to harm Rusty." Admiral Wright pulled the team aside. "This situation is escalating beyond our control," she said quietly, "but we need to maintain this advantage. The Vraxians respect strength above all else." "You want me to send Rusty down there?" Jack asked incredulously. "Not to fight," Wright clarified. "Just to demonstrate his abilities. Show them how he responds to commands. Keep it simple. Keep it safe." Dr. Powell nodded in agreement. "They're looking for an excuse to dismiss us as weak. If we refuse this challenge outright, we may lose whatever respect we've gained." Jack looked down at Rusty, who gazed back with trusting eyes. "I don't like this." "None of us do," Wright said. "But right now, that dog might be Earth's best diplomat." After a moment of internal struggle, Jack nodded reluctantly. "I'll do it, but at the first sign of danger, I'm calling him back." He turned to Commander Scathar. "We accept your challenge, but under strict conditions. This is a demonstration only, not combat. The drone must not use any weapons or harmful tactics." The commander agreed with surprising readiness. "The drone will be set to training parameters only." As Jack and Rusty were escorted to the arena entrance, Martinez touched his arm. "The Vraxian's body language shows fear, not aggression," she observed. "I think Commander Scathar is under pressure from his subordinates to prove humans aren't as dangerous as they suspect." Jack nodded grimly. "Let's hope you're right about that drone." Standing at the arena's edge, Jack gave Rusty's head a gentle pat. "Stay close to me, buddy," he murmured. "This isn't what either of us signed up for." The large doors slid open, revealing the brightly lit arena. Jack stepped forward with Rusty at his heel, feeling the weight of both civilizations watching their every move. Jack and Rusty stood at the center of the arena, the bright lights making the metal floor gleam around them. The security drone hovered 20 feet away, its sensors visibly scanning them. In the observation deck above, Admiral Wright and the rest of the human team watched tensely alongside the Vraxian officers. "Let's keep this simple," Jack muttered to himself, patting his leg for Rusty to stay close. The dog remained perfectly calm despite the strange environment. Commander Scathar's voice boomed through speakers. "Begin the assessment." The drone hummed louder and began to move in a circular pattern around them. Jack decided to start with basic commands, nothing that would seem aggressive. "Rusty, sit." The dog immediately sat, eyes alert and watching the drone. "Stay." Jack walked several paces away. Rusty remained motionless. The drone changed direction suddenly, moving closer. Its sensors glowed brighter as it analyzed the dog. "The beast shows unusual restraint," one of the Vraxian scientists observed over the communication system. "No sign of aggression despite the proximity of an unknown entity." Jack called Rusty to his side again. "Good boy," he said quietly, rewarding the dog with a quick scratch behind the ears. "Now demonstrate tactical capabilities," Commander Scathar ordered. Jack hesitated. "I'm not sure what you mean by that." "Battle functions, attack patterns, defense protocols." "That's not what he's trained for," Jack explained. "He's a service animal." The commander made a dismissive sound. "Then show us these service functions." Jack nodded and pulled the tennis ball from his pocket again. "Rusty, fetch." He threw the ball across the arena. As Rusty darted after the ball, the drone suddenly moved to intercept, hovering directly in the dog's path. Rusty simply adjusted his course, gracefully dodging around the machine without breaking stride, caught the ball, and returned to Jack. The Vraxians in the observation deck chittered excitedly. "Remarkable evasion capabilities," one noted. It predicted the drone's movement pattern instantly. Jack smiled despite his nervousness. Rusty had simply done what any dog would do, avoid an obstacle while chasing a ball. The drone moved closer, now just a few feet away from them. Jack felt uneasy about its proximity. "Rusty, behind me," he commanded. The dog immediately moved to position himself behind Jack's legs, a standard service dog position when encountering potential threats. Suddenly, the drone emitted a high-pitched sound. Rusty's ears flattened, and he growled softly, a rare response from the well-trained animal. "What's happening?" Jack demanded, looking up at the observation deck. "A simple stress test," Commander Scathar replied. "All subjects must be evaluated under various conditions." The drone moved even closer, the noise increasing. Rusty's growl deepened, and Jack could see the dog was becoming genuinely distressed. "Stop this now," Jack called out firmly. "You're hurting him." When the drone continued advancing, Jack made a quick decision. "Rusty, back." The dog immediately retreated several steps, creating distance between himself and the drone. Jack quickly followed, trying to position himself protectively. One of the junior Vraxian officers leaned too far over the observation rail in excitement. The sudden movement caught Rusty's attention in his already agitated state. The dog barked sharply, once, twice, 3 times, the sound echoing through the metal arena. The effect on the Vraxians was immediate and dramatic. Several officers physically recoiled. One dropped a data tablet. Commander Scathar himself took an involuntary step backward. The drone suddenly accelerated toward Jack and Rusty, apparently triggered by the barking. Its ports opened, revealing what looked disturbingly like weapon mounts. "Rusty, evade," Jack shouted, using a command from the dog's agility training. Rusty sprang into action, darting to the side with impressive speed. The drone followed, but the dog was faster, circling the arena with the machine in pursuit. "Shut it down," Admiral Wright demanded from the observation deck. This wasn't the agreement. Watching Rusty effortlessly outmaneuver the drone, the Vraxians seemed too shocked to respond. Jack whistled sharply, and Rusty immediately changed direction, running back to his side. The beast responds to sonic commands too, a Vraxian scientist noted with alarm, and observe its speed, far superior to our pursuit technology. Commander Scathar finally raised a clawed hand. "End the assessment." The drone powered down immediately, settling to the floor with a soft clank. The arena fell silent except for Rusty's panting. Jack knelt beside his dog, checking him for any signs of injury. "Good boy," he murmured. "You did great." Jack and Rusty returned to the diplomatic quarters to find Admiral Wright already formulating a new strategy. The human team gathered around a small table, their expressions a mix of relief and cautious optimism. "The commander has requested another meeting in 2 hours," Wright informed them. "Their entire demeanor has changed. Whatever they saw in that arena has them deeply concerned." Dr. Powell nodded eagerly. "We need to leverage this misunderstanding while we can. They believe we control dangerous predators with our minds." "I don't feel right about lying," Jack said, scratching Rusty behind the ears. The dog had fully recovered from the excitement and now lay contentedly at his feet. "We won't lie," Admiral Wright replied. "We'll simply present the facts in a way they'll understand through their cultural lens." "Lieutenant Martinez, what more have you learned about their psychology?" Martinez pulled out her tablet. "The Vraxians evolved from herd-dwelling herbivores on a planet with numerous apex predators. Their military culture is relatively recent, perhaps a response to the vulnerability they felt in their natural state. They respect power, but they fear unpredictability. And they think we're predator handlers," Jack said, still uncomfortable with the deception. "More than that," Martins corrected. "They think we've domesticated apex predators at a civilization-wide scale. To them, that makes us either tremendously powerful or completely insane. Possibly both." Admiral Wright stood up, her decision made. "Then that's our angle. When we meet with them again, we don't correct their assumptions. Jack, you'll demonstrate more of Rusty's training. Focus on the subtle commands, the ones that look almost telepathic." "What about their invasion fleet?" Dr. Powell asked. "We make it clear that Earth has millions of these war beasts, all trained to protect their human partners," Wright said. "We imply that an invasion would face resistance unlike anything they've encountered before." 2 hours later, they stood again in the command center. This time, the Vraxian officers maintained a respectful distance from Rusty. Commander Scathar's posture was noticeably less arrogant. "Your beast's performance was impressive," the commander began. "Our tactical analysts have been reviewing the data." "Thank you," Admiral Wright replied smoothly. "Though, as Lieutenant Mason explained, Rusty is considered quite ordinary on Earth." The statement wasn't technically a lie. Rusty was indeed an ordinary service dog by Earth standards. The implied meaning, however, sent visible ripples of concern through the assembled Vraxians. "Perhaps we have been hasty in our assessment of Earth's strategic value," Commander Scathar said carefully. "A full-scale military operation might be inefficient." Jack caught the Admiral's subtle nod and stepped forward with Rusty. "Commander, with your permission, I'd like to demonstrate how humans and our companions work together." The commander agreed with visible caution. Jack positioned himself across the room from Rusty, then covered his mouth with his hand and whispered a command so quietly that even the nearby humans couldn't hear it. Rusty, trained to respond to hand signals as well as voice commands, immediately performed a series of movements, sitting, lying down, and rolling over. "As you can see," Jack explained, "the connection between humans and our companions doesn't require technology. It's a natural bond developed over thousands of years. The Vraxian scientific officer leaned toward the commander, speaking rapidly in their native language. The translation devices only caught fragments: telepathic potential, evolutionary advantages, and reassessed threat level. Commander Scathar's scales shifted color slightly as he addressed Admiral Wright. We propose a temporary non-aggression agreement while our leadership evaluates the unique aspects of human civilization. Wright maintained a neutral expression, though Jack could see the relief in her eyes. That seems reasonable. We're always open to peaceful coexistence. And your war beasts? Another Vraxian officer asked nervously. They are all as controlled as this one. Jack smiled, patting Rusty's head. Every dog on Earth is a cherished partner to humanity. They protect us, and we protect them. As the Vraxians drafted preliminary non-aggression terms, Jack noticed Commander Scathar watching Rusty with what almost looked like fascination rather than fear. The empire that had arrived demanding Earth's surrender was now offering peace terms, all because of a misunderstanding about man's best friend. The formal signing of the Earth-Vraxian Non-Aggression Treaty took place in a grand chamber aboard the Dominant Claw. The walls gleamed with decorative medals that told the history of Vraxian conquests. Conspicuously, Earth would not be joining those engravings. Admiral Wright signed for humanity, her pen making a soft scratch against the alien parchment. Commander Scathar pressed his scaled palm against a biochemical reader, officially committing the Vraxian Empire to peace with Earth. A historic moment for both our species, the Admiral said, offering her hand in the human gesture of agreement. The commander hesitated before carefully extending his clawed hand. Indeed, your world has surprised us. Around them, human and Vraxian representatives mingled with cautious curiosity. The fear that had initially gripped the aliens when confronted with Rusty had gradually transformed into something resembling respect. Jack stood near one wall, Rusty at his side as always. Several junior Vraxian officers kept glancing in their direction, clearly intrigued but still wary. They want to approach, but they're scared, Martinez observed, joining Jack. This could be a valuable cultural exchange moment. Jack nodded and knelt beside Rusty. Come on, buddy. Let's make some alien friends. He walked slowly toward the group of Vraxians, who stiffened but held their ground. Would any of you like to meet Rusty properly? Jack asked. He's very friendly. One younger officer stepped forward hesitantly. The war beast permits touching. He enjoys it actually, Jack said. Hold out your hand, palm down, and let him sniff you first. The Vraxian extended a trembling clawed hand. Rusty sniffed it casually, then sat down, his tail wagging gently against the floor. The assembled aliens watched in astonishment. Now you can pet him gently on his head, Jack instructed. With extreme caution, the Vraxian officer touched Rusty's fur. The dog responded by leaning slightly into the touch, causing the alien to freeze momentarily before continuing with more confidence. It's soft, the officer said, sounding surprise. And warm. Soon other Vraxians gathered around, each taking turns carefully petting Rusty, who soaked up the attention with typical canine enthusiasm. Jack noticed Commander Scathar watching from across the room, his expression unreadable. Later, as the human delegation prepared to return to their shuttle, the commander approached Jack privately. Lieutenant Mason, Scathar said, his voice lowered. I wish to ask something of a personal nature. Of course, Commander. The imposing Vraxian glanced around to ensure they weren't overheard. Is it possible? Could a high-ranking Vraxian officer acquire one of these Earth war beasts? For strategic research purposes, naturally. Jack struggled to keep his expression neutral. You want a dog of your own. A smaller one, perhaps, Scathar said quickly. For practical reasons, our ship environments aren't designed for large predators. Jack thought of the millions of puppies on Earth looking for homes. I think that could be arranged as part of our cultural exchange program. We have many varieties of dogs, including smaller breeds. The commander's scales rippled with what Jack now recognized as pleasure. Excellent. This would be valuable for understanding Earth's military advantages. As Jack rejoined the human delegation, Admiral Wright raised an eyebrow questioningly. Commander Cathar wants a puppy, Jack explained quietly. Dr. Powell nearly choked. A fearsome alien warlord wants a puppy. He's calling it strategic research, Jack said with a small smile. But yes, essentially. Admiral Wright's eyes twinkled with amusement. Well, Lieutenant, it seems your service dog may have just brokered a more meaningful alliance than any diplomat could have managed. As their shuttle departed the Vraxian flagship, Earth's news services were already broadcasting the successful peace agreement. No one mentioned that humanity's savior had 4 legs and a wagging tail. 6 months later, diplomatic channels would confirm that small war beast companions had become highly sought status symbols among Vraxian leadership. Commander Cathar himself had become particularly attached to a corgi puppy named Warrior, who reportedly slept on the commander's bed and had his own special chair in the Vraxian War Council. Earth had gained a reputation throughout the galaxy as the planet of beast masters, a misconception that provided better protection than any weapon humanity could have developed. And in diplomatic circles, it became common knowledge that if you wanted to negotiate successfully with the formidable Vraxian Empire, bringing along a friendly dog was the surest path to peace.